My father. But he died, and my mother had to raise me, and that's how I came to Saint Vincent. I'd gone to Catholic grade school, and my mother was running a business, and had to concentrate on that. So somehow she found out about Saint Vincent, and I came here. The Benedictines became the men in my life. I've got to say it. What I have started here. I had no knowledge of football, among other things, when I came. Father Elred taught me how to take a stance. But without that beginning, I would not have had an education. The knowledge of football that I gained here paid for my education at junior college, paid for my education at the University of Richmond, met my wife through football because I would not have gone to the junior college and would not have met her. We would not have had the 8 children that we have.
We belong to this unique fraternity of men. You know, we come in as boys, we leave as men, but we always come back as boys.
It is very unique going to an all-boys atmosphere in through your high school years, which are very delicate years, I think. It's when you suddenly reach maturity. And I just can't think of any part of my life that I had more good times.
When I would come up here and I would bring my 2 sons to show them, hey, this is where your dad went to prep school. This was my high school, you know. And I would bring them into the hallway here. And I brought them in for the first time, and it was like a flood of memories, because you would still have those, you still had the same banisters, the same stairwells, you know, the creak of walking up.
The size, and all the monks, and the discipline, and the long hallways, and the headmaster.
I look back on those times of corporal punishment and the great authority and social distance that the prefects had, and I remember them fondly. It's the kind of youth that we can't have anymore.
It's been a wonderful adventure that continues to this day. And the one thing that I really thank Saint Vincent for is it prepared me and gave me the confidence to face whatever I came up with, whatever I came up against.
I spent 25 years here at Saint Vincent, and I don't regret any of them. I mean, it was, even looking back, they become fonder, and as ranks grow thinner and thinner and we get closer to the top of the list, a lot keeps coming back, and I said it was been a good experience, and wonderful people here that I've been exposed to, and I can still count as my friends, as well as just confreres and Confederates, but good friends.
The 4 years at Saint Vincent saved my life. My younger sister was an alcoholic. She abandoned her son on his 2nd birthday at my doorstep. I subsequently adopted him. She suicided 10 years later, and my younger brother is in jail. I only have 2 siblings, and I have had a wonderful life, and I credit that to the 4 years that I spent here.
I'll always be grateful to the monks, to my classmates, to the teachers and staff at Saint Vincent for all they have done for me. And I'll remember that.
I guess at that time, my allowance must have been about 25 cents a week. I don't know. We had enough to go to the movies. I think a movie cost a dime or 15 cents. We'd go into to the movies and then walk back again. And it was a different outing.
And of course, at that time, St. Xavier's was still going, and you dated the girls from there on that sort of thing. So we had those types of experiences. I remember that.
My effort to be on the wild side, my senior year, I had a young lady I was dating, the one true love of 18 or 17 and a half, and I would sneak out and go to Greensburg to visit her.
The Glee Club was a wonderful thing. We had a Father Martin that taught the Glee Club, and we used to coexist with St. Xavier's Academy. And we used to travel all around singing songs and putting on operettas and stuff like that. That was a good time for me. I loved that.
And it was just all that whole thing, the afternoons, the plays, the football games I participated in, and all these things were just rich memories. And I think when you figure that but I think of the whole thing put together was the sound values, which these Benedictine monks pounded into our heads, and I use that very justly as a heavy weight. The development of consciousness, of your conscience had to be, and all the things, and I think made better men out of all of us. And I think that's why I really enjoy my prep years.
I am among the second youngest alumni class of St. Vincent that can remember the clanging of the bell towers and what the original St. Vincent bread tasted and smelled like. The fire occurred during January of my sophomore year.
He said, all right, I want you to be orderly. I want you to stand up, get in line. We're going to leave the building. There's a fire in the building.
And we're like, the jaws drop, and we walk out, and we're walking outside. It's the same experience. We stood on the steps of what is now called the Robert S. Carey Center, and it's freezing. I mean, it may not have been below zero, but it was cold.
Football was a lot of fun whenever we played, and Rafferty was a great coach. In fact, that's what made me become a teacher. I mean, when we were seniors, it was just, the war had just ended, and people were still working. When he came back for camp, he was the only coach, and we had a bunch of freshmen on the team even, because everybody had graduated except about 3 of us. And so he got together with a group of the kids that were going to be linemen, and he brought them over to me and he said, I want you to give these guys the ropes. And he said, so he stood in front of everybody and he said, now you listen to him. He's a good teacher. Right then and there, I mean, it's when I decided, well, maybe I'll become a teacher. Rafferty was the one who started me on the road.
We had probably one of the best preps. I think it was the best preps team that they ever had in this school. It was undefeated. We had a big game in Blairsville, which they were undefeated at the time, and we defeated them.
I also remember the marching band that we used to have, and we enjoyed marching in the parade in Latrobe or going to the football games. They were very enjoyable moments for those who weren't on the field playing football.
And Chuck Manoli told us that, he said that if your name, he said, for you people who didn't get an A in my class, if you ever appear in a Newsweek or a Time magazine story, you send me a copy of the story, and I'll go back and I'll change your grade to an A.
I always looked forward to the springs, although here at St. Vincent's the springs were either late spring, but they were really enjoyable being on the baseball team and being a part of the community.
I started running towards first base and I realized that he was standing on the base. And I made a straight line right down the center of his body. And I ran over him. And he dropped the ball. And we won. And it taught me never give up.
You got to meet a lot of role models, and I could name, Father Vernon, Father Camillus, Father Charles, Father Augustine, Father Reginald. I mean, people that taught you that if you didn't have a vocation, there was still a vocation to pursue outside of the monastery, and you could still make a difference in the world. And I think hopefully that's what I did with my life.
But I think my best memories of the prep come from the monks here, the men that educated me. I can't say enough about them.
Of course, the prefects, I can remember their dedication, their words of encouragement, their care for us, people who even modeled a vocation of which I'm part of it today.
The priests really became, not only after you got out of school, they were mentors, educators, but they were friends.
Father Aiden was the prefect, that was the headmaster at the time in the Scholasticate. And he used to like to take us hunting on the Sunday afternoon.
Overall, I think Father Julian was the best influence on me. Father Julian was an outdoorsman, and that's what I was. I was an outdoorsman. And he taught, I still think of things that we were doing when I was under the care of Father Julian.
So, but we learned a lot in St. Vincent, and I wanted to be a doctor. And I was thinking about to take the courses which would help me the most with the medicine, which I did. And when I finally get into college, I went to pre-med. But here I studied biology, and Father Julian taught me that.
I never thought of things that way before. It was Father Jerome that made me think, yeah, there's a bigger picture here. And if anyone taught me about love at age 14, it was Father Jerome.
I did a lot of those same things when I taught for the next 35 years. Some of the things I learned here, I use the same old quotes that Father Jerome used in our geometry class. I used them in my geometry classes too. And I just didn't have the pretzels to give everyone.
I too had Father Jerome for geometry and for trigonometry. My career took me into civil engineering, where geometry and trig are just absolutely essential.
And Father Pierman was a guy who certainly took teaching seriously, yet at the same time he was a fun guy. And when I went away to college then, I didn't know what I was going to major in, and I said, well, I might as well take German.
Father Augustine, he had that vein that stood out, and it ran down the center of his forehead, and it was just bright red when he would get upset at us in Latin classes, especially in conjugating verbs and that sort of thing.
Father Camillus, who would like to dramatize in English class, grammar, when he would talk about dangling participles and so forth, he would kind of dance.
Father Arthur Holtz was actually my hero. And when I started in prep school, I was able to perform in all of the Gilbert and Sullivan operettas.
But we had Father Claude, and let me tell you, he was small, but he was powerful, and you were not going to fool around with him there.
And you're going to connect up and learn how to use the Bunsen burner. Okay, and I connected up, and Father Lewis is the instructor, and I says, I got my match or whatever it is up there, and I'm trying to light it, and I says, nothing's happening. And Father Lewis says, turn it on full blast, Bill, turn it on full blast. I turned it on full blast, and because it happens every year, but this year it was me. Connects it up not to the gas jet, but to the water jet.
And talking to Father Lewis shortly before graduating, he said, "You really ought to be a chemical engineer." And I said, "Oh, okay." I had no idea what that meant. But I did. And I went actually all the way to a PhD in chemical engineering. And I have to say that his career choice for me was absolutely correct, because out of the 31 years that I worked, I could count on one hand the number of days that I went to work that I said, I really don't want to go to work. Every other day it was like, I can't wait to go to work to see what happened to yesterday's experiment or whatever might have happened.
It's hard to single out any one of those people that, you know, really was extra special, because they were all special.
I want to talk about a guy who was a real special guy, Father Louis Sedlacco. He was our headmaster. He was tough on us when we deserved it. I was a day hop, and so I didn't stay here, but I was part of the environment just because we went to school here. I left Saint Vincent, graduated '59, the prep, and went into the service. Got out of the service and started drinking, got a nothing job, basically was bumming around and doing little with my life. And just by luck, one day I stopped in to visit Father Lewis, and he saw what a shape I was in, and I was probably half drunk, and he said, "John, what are you doing with your life?" And I said, "Nothing." And he said, "Just sit there." And he picked up the phone and called somebody from the college, and he said, "I got a guy coming over who needs money, needs help, and I want you to take him as a student, freshman student at Saint Vincent College." So he literally turned my life around, because where I was headed was not a good place to head. And what successes I've had in life since then go to a lot of things, but if Louis hadn't picked up that phone and said, "You know, I got a guy coming over, no problem," and it was above and beyond.
The Benedictine motto is work hard, pray hard, play hard.
There was always a lot of work, that old notion of ora et labora around here. I often wondered if there was more labora than there was ora, because we would pick potatoes up on the field that is now a grassy area, I guess, for lacrosse. We'd go over to the convent and pick plums and do a lot of different things for the nuns, and stayed very, very busy. And I think some of those kind of work ethic and habits and kind of ideas and the discipline that this place afforded me has kind of lasted me a lifetime.
It was one of the gifts that we didn't know we were receiving, but all along we were being shown by example just how to help one another, how to be there for other people when they need it. I mean, the education, all that was all fantastic, and everybody knows it was education in the Benedictine style, and that was important, but it wasn't as important as the learning of helping one another, and I'll always remember it and hopefully live that in my life.
The education that we got here was, I think, second to none.
And I thought it was a great place. So and I talked to my mother and dad about it, and they came up here to see it and talk to them about it and see what the education was here. And my mother and dad thought this is where they want to educate us here. It's at Saint Vincent.
When you got into the real world, as far as an occupation, it seemed easy. You know, when someone said, "I need a letter on this," or "I need a memo on this," it was kind of like, and they'd say, "How'd you do that?" Well, I think it was the foundations of Saint Vincent. It was the education. And I think that stays with you lifelong and in everything you do.
And I guess for me, while there are a lot of funny stories, one of the things that I found intriguing as I've gotten older and look back was that this school really did open up a lot of opportunities for me just to think about things in a different way.
The education we got here was very special. It made a lot of us men. It gave us self-discipline in our lives. It just taught us to think, to reason out things before we made decisions.
Well, all life is precious.
and being able to share that experience, whether in the form of story or whether it's story plus some level of visuals, is a way of helping other people understand one element of Saint Vincent, as well as the people that have been here. And you know, if anybody takes a walk up through the cemetery and goes by the iron crosses, as you see names, in my experience, we had about 4 or 5 guys that were the Benedictine prefects that we had. There was an Aloysius, an Alexander, Simon, Benjamin, all of whom have died and are buried on the hill. But some of those stories that people tell are ways that those individuals continue to live and serve to provide either inspiration or in some instances, advice or humor, or just whatever their life was, and how that might have meaning in the larger picture of Saint Vincent.
I really enjoy this part of my life, and the 4 years I spent at the prep were probably the greatest formative years of my entire life.
I think it's very important to have records like this, because you just can't really know what things were like maybe back then. And,
you know, I think we see so much today of the young people that have no knowledge of what went on in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s. And I think by having something like this, you know, let's listen to what went on then. I think it may be of value to you.
Well, I think it's very important because we're dying, and you know, once we're gone, there will be really no recollection of what that life was like, and it was a rich life intellectually and spiritually, medium life in terms of, you know, material kinds of things.
So I think it is very important to do that. Just to talk about those things and bring back those memories, and probably to see why some of those events focused and changed your life when you became a man and had to do the same things that the priests were doing and teaching us. We did the same things with the students of our generation. So I think it is important.
I do think it's important to have people have different perspectives, because I think in addition to the fun stories that we might remember and the things that we did that we thought were really bad kinds of things, there's a lot of benefit. And I think since the prep school is no longer, while some of us are still around to share those stories, I think it's important that we do that.
Oral history is the making of our new generation. We're all getting into it. I'm glad St. Vincent thought it, really. I think it's an answer to what we need for our grandchildren and those long beyond that.
It's precious. These are precious moments in the lives of all of us because we're all being formed. We use that in holy circles. We're in formation, and so history is a part of that.
Like most of the Prepsters who were with me during this period, we came here at the age of 13 or 14, and some of us continued. We're still here in our 60s, and those who were here during this period are also in their 60s. But we spent 4 critical years in the prep school that really made a difference in our lives. They were very formative years where we made the transition from early adolescence to manhood, really. And I think the important role models that we had during that that particular age played a just defining role on who we became, the identities that we have, today were in great part formed by the tremendous individuals that we had exposure to during those years, and many of them Benedictines, many of them laymen who had the opportunity to touch our lives, to be concerned about who we were and wanted to make a difference in our lives. And as we take this moment to reflect upon the prep school and all of those who've had an important role in our lives, we certainly want to give gratitude to Almighty God for the wonderful opportunity that we had to be exposed to individuals who had deep spirituality, who were substantial human beings in every respect, professionals, great leaders, and who helped to form us in ways that enable us now to make a contribution to our families, to our communities, and to the world in which we live.